Hello everybody, this is Andrew with Programming Liftoff, and today we're going to learn how to use Twilio to create a text messaging service that allows us to get the latest COVID-19 data for a country or a US state. We'll use Twilio Studio and Twilio functions to do this, and we'll call an API to get the latest COVID-19 data. I recorded a demo on my phone earlier so we can watch it and see what we'll be creating. So as you can see, you can text the name of a state like California to the phone number, and then you'll get a reply with the data for that state. And if you text a country name, you'll get a reply with the country's data. You'll also notice that there's a sent from your Twilio trial account message at the beginning of every reply. That's because this is a Twilio trial account, so that message will be present unless you choose to upgrade to a paid account, which requires entering your credit card, so you can decide if you want to do that. Also, as a quick PSA, please use common sense and follow the recommendations of health officials to help prevent the spread of this virus and to help keep everybody safe and healthy. Alright, now let's get started. So the first thing you'll need to do is log in or sign up with Twilio. To do that, head over to Twilio's website. I'll put a link in the description, but it's a pretty simple URL, just twilio.com. And click login if you have an account. If not, click sign up. They'll ask you for some details, and they'll ask you a couple questions, and you also have to verify your phone number to sign up. And once you've done that, you'll be ready to start creating the text message service. Alright, so once you log in, you should see a screen similar to this. You might not have all these options up here on the left sidebar, so you can go ahead and pin them up here real quick. To do that, click the three dots here, and then for the phone numbers option, click the pin to pin it to the dock. And then also scroll down and pin the functions and studio options to the dock. We'll be using these in this video, so it's a little easier to access them if they're pinned. The first thing we'll need is a Twilio phone number, so to get that we can click the phone numbers option. And then to buy a number you can click the plus button up here. You can see I already have a number, but you'll need to buy a number to start with. And you can enter some digits here to search for a number with those digits in it, or you can click search to just generate a random list of phone numbers to choose from. And you'll see that there's a $1 monthly fee for whatever number you choose, but if you're using a Twilio trial account, that will be covered by your trial credits. Alright, so after you buy your number, we're ready to create the studio flow. So if you go ahead and head over to the studio, and then you can click the create a flow button and choose a flow name. I'm going to call it COVID data, and click next, and then we can just start it from scratch. Alright, so this is the Twilio Studio, and the Twilio Studio is pretty neat because it allows you to visually design and implement the flow of what happens when your phone number receives a call or a text message. So we're going to start by replying with a simple message every time our number gets an incoming text message. So to do that, find the send message block on the right and drag it onto the canvas, and then you can rename the widget to send reply. And then we're just going to send a static string for now, so you can just say hello from Twilio. Alright, and save that. And then you want to drag the dot from incoming message to the send reply widget, and then publish the flow. Okay, so at this point we've created our flow, but we haven't hooked it up to our phone number yet. So to do that, head to the phone numbers section, and then your number should now appear in this list. So you can click your number, and then scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see that there's a messaging section. So when a message comes in, we want to run our studio flow, and then we can select a flow, and our flow is in the drop down, so click that, and then click save. So now our phone number is connected to that studio flow, so whenever we receive a text message at that phone number, it will reply to that with the message hello from Twilio. So at this point you can text your phone number to test that out. One thing to keep in mind is that with trial accounts, Twilio will only send outgoing messages to verified phone numbers on the account. So your phone number is the only one that will work with Twilio. Right now, if you try and test the studio flow with another phone number, it won't get the reply from Twilio because that phone number hasn't been verified yet. So make sure to do all your testing with your phone number, and if you upgrade to a paid account, then you can send messages to any phone number. So just keep that in mind as you're creating your text message service. Okay, and once that's working, we're ready to add a Twilio function to the flow. So to do that, we'll start by creating a function. So if you go to the functions option on the left and then click create a function, and we'll use the JSON response template and click create. Alright, so we can rename our function to, we'll call it get COVID data, and for the path we'll say COVID, and then you can check this access control box. This just makes it so that only Twilio can invoke this function, so if somebody else tries to make a request to this URL, it won't work for them. That way we don't get charged a bunch of money if somebody calls the function a bunch of times. And then we'll go down to the function and we'll customize this a bit. So change this response, change the object to, we'll say message. And then for the value, you can say event.location. And that doesn't mean anything yet, but we're going to configure the Studio Flow to pass a location in the event object. And then this is just going to return this response, which is a simple JSON object with the message being the same location that was passed to it by the Studio Flow. So for now, this function is simple and it'll just return the same thing that it was given. So you can click save for the function, and then we'll head on back to the studio and open up our flow. Alright, and so now if you scroll on the right, you can drag the run function block onto the canvas, and we can rename this to get COVID data. For now it's not getting the data yet, but once we finish it will be, and then we can select the function in the URL dropdown. And then for the function parameters, this is where we pass it the location. So for the key, type location, and for the value, we're going to use a template string. Template strings are present in the Studio Flow to reference the inputs and outputs to different widgets on the canvas. So we can find the trigger widget and get the message body, and we'll send that as the location. So we're assuming that whatever the message body of the incoming text message is, we're assuming that's a location. That's why we're naming it location, and we're going to pass that to our function. So we can save that. And then now we want to reorganize our flow to call the function when we get an incoming message. And if the function is successful, we want to send a reply. But now instead of saying hello from Twilio, we're going to remove that and add a template string here. And we're going to find the widgets.getCOVIDData. And we're going to select this option that says .parsed. So widgets.getCOVIDData.parsed. And then add a .message at the end. So if you remember, our Twilio function returned an object that had a message as a key and the event location as the value. So since we're returning that message, the parsed key contains that JSON object returned from the function. And so to get the message from that, we just access the message like this using the dot notation. So we can save that, and then we can publish our flow. And at this point, our Twilio Studio Flow should be returning the same thing that we send it. So it should just be echoing our input right now. So go ahead and test that to see if it's working. Alright, so now that we have the function added to the flow, we can customize the function to get the latest COVID data rather than just returning the location that is sent to it. So to do that, we can open up our function again and click on it to edit it. And then in the interest of time, I'm going to copy and paste a function I created. So you can go to this URL to access the public GitHub repository I made, and I'll put this URL in the description as well. And then if you open up the Twilio-function file, this contains the Twilio function we'll be using. So if you just copy that and paste that in here, and then I'll go over it real quick. So first, we require the Axios library. So the Axios library makes making API requests simpler. Next, we define an array of states, which we'll be using later. Then we define our function, and this is an async function since we're using the await keyword for our API request. And we start by defining an empty response object. Then we get the location from the event object, and we remove any white space around it. Next, we define a states or countries variable that is going to either be the states string or countries string, depending on whether or not the location is present in the states array. And we use this to determine what API route we call. So on the next line down here in a try-catch block, we make the API request using that variable, so either the states or the countries API route, and then we pass the location at the end of that API request. And then we destructure the cases and deaths from the data returned from that request, and we add those to a message that we put on the response object. And if there's an error getting the data from the API, then we set the response message equal to this error string. And then the callback returns this data to the Studio flow, which sends the response to the user. So we can go ahead and save this. Alright, so we will need to make one more additional change to get our function to work. So if you go to the Configure tab right here, and scroll down, you'll see the list of dependencies for our function, and you'll notice that Axios is not included in this list. So we can add Axios by clicking the plus button and just typing Axios. And currently the latest version is 0.19.2, so you can go ahead and enter that and then click Save. Alright, and that will redeploy the function, and that is it. So now when you text a state or country name to your phone number, you should get a reply with the latest COVID data for that location. If you want to explore other COVID data API endpoints, there are quite a few others that you can access. So the API that we're using is this novel COVID-19 API, and the docs for it are at this URL, which I'll put in the description. So the API routes that we're using in our function currently are this one right here, the v2 states API, to get data for a state. And we're also using the v2 countries API route to get data for a specific country. One other API route that's pretty useful if you live in the United States is the New York Times Counties API route. So this will give you this specific data for a county within a state, which is pretty useful if you want to get more granular data, not just the whole state, but a specific county. And that is it for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned how to get started with Twilio. Stay healthy, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.